I understand that Dillon Sanders worked at multiple TV networks. He worked, I think, at CBS, NFL Network. I understand that. A lot of people at that NFL Network building know Dillon. But it is our job as broadcasters to cut through that and be honest with the audience. And I'm not going to call out anybody individually, but I thought it was really strange that all the draft coverage that I saw as everybody was shocked, dismayed that Shedeur Sanders had fallen in the draft, nobody said, even mentioned that maybe dad didn't help him out. I know a lot of people know Dillon Sanders and like him. But go back to January. Go back to the Super Bowl week when Dillon is on multiple shows. It wasn't until mid-March when Dillon, probably somebody got into his ear. Or maybe he came to his senses, where Dillon Sanders said, okay, my son can be drafted by anybody. Until that point, during key evaluation months, go to the Super Bowl. Look it up. I went this morning and looked at clips, found 4 different shows of Dillon Sanders with arrogance, hubris, confidence, saying, hey, it's going to be on our terms. There are teams he will not be playing for. Now, time out. He wasn't directing that at Andy Reid and the Chiefs, Sean McDermott and the Bills. He wasn't directing that at well-run teams with star quarterbacks. He was specifically directing that at these 7 or 8 teams, and that's about the only teams that need a quarterback. 7 or 8 teams that needed a quarterback, many of them struggling franchises. And he, in interview after interview publicly, was going out saying, again, with great confidence, I know the game. I know what's behind the curtain. We're not going to play for certain teams. Okay, so Shedeur's not that great of a prospect. This draft class, quarterback class, is so weak that Cam Ward is in line with Bo Nix. Okay, Bo Nix went to the Broncos. You want to know who was drafted ahead of him? Lots of people. Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix. Okay, so Shedeur Sanders, as a prospect, is below, and many people believe far below, Cam Ward. Many believe he's also behind Jackson Dart, the Giants did. Whether you agree with that or not, this is not a John Elway. This is not an Andrew Luck. This is not even a Caleb Williams prospect where you're going to overlook some stuff. Right? And so just let's go back to this. Shedeur is a prospect. He's going to be an employee of a business. And your dad is saying, there are teams we will not play for. And that's directed at many of the teams that were interested. It wasn't directed at the best teams in the league. And nobody wants to just note that, acknowledge that, mention that. You know, I've said on my show before, quarterback dad has become pageant mom, where the heart is in the right place, but sometimes they do a disservice to their kids. We saw this with Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback for Tennessee. Great program. Dad stepped in. Son didn't show up to a spring practice. We're out of here. And he had no market. UCLA has one of the smallest NILs in the Big Ten. The kid reportedly took a pay cut to live in a much more expensive city and go to a much less storied football program. Quarterback dad. So college football sent a message. It wasn't collusion. People weren't on the phone. And this is not collusion. Remember, only 7 or 8 teams needed a quarterback. And I could argue only 2 teams needed a starting quarterback, Tennessee and Pittsburgh, unless the Steelers have some Aaron Rodgers deal agreed to. But I understand people being turned off. And then this has to be acknowledged too, as people at these networks doing the draft are not mentioning this. He not only interviewed poorly, Todd McShay on his podcast for The Ringer acknowledged he named a name. Brian Daboll brought him in. Shedeur Sanders wasn't prepared on the whiteboard. When he called him out, Shedeur Sanders didn't take it well. So you may not like that there was anonymous coaches saying it was the worst interview ever. I can understand if you don't like that. That feels a little harsh. I get that. However, that doesn't make it untrue. There are multiple reports now, multiple teams that did not feel that Shedeur was engaged, that Shedeur made people feel small. It's okay to mention that stuff. So again, the greater the prospect, the more flaws you can have. And quarterback's different. You know, throughout the years, I talked to a lot of people in the league. Of all the sports I cover, I have far more NFL sources, mostly because that's your favorite sport and it drives a number. But when I talk to scouts and executives about football players, they talk about skill and talent and toughness. When I talk to executives about quarterbacks, the conversation changes. It's about leadership and focus, the ability to cognitively get up to speed, read a defense, totally different conversation. Everything's different for quarterbacks. That's why I was so tough on Johnny Manziel and Baker Mayfield on maturity. I didn't care if they were a Mike linebacker, a right guard. When you're a quarterback, the conversation changes. You know, you need a lot of things from a quarterback that you don't need from other players. Maturity, focus, what really matters. You have to love football. I've been critical of Trevor Lawrence, who has said before, football doesn't define me. Well, people are looking for quarterbacks where football defines them. They want you to be obsessed. They want you to be Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. I'm sorry, they do. I didn't make the rules up. So I just thought it's a bit disingenuous to not mention the fact that football dad Deion was setting parameters up directed at the teams that were going to draft his son, which I think was a big turnoff. You know, I've had NFL people say this before. We're not the NBA. We don't do load management. It's like, no, NBA's got its own culture. That's not our culture. And college football sent that message to Nico Iamaleava. And I think some of this was, hey, man, listen, no parameters. You got to interview better. And I said this on the air Friday, I didn't love, your draft room with legendary posted all over it. A little cringy. The New York Giant cleats, a little cringy. Not the end of the world, not everything, a little something. But, you have to be like, when people are texting me that are not in football or don't cover football, and they're sending legitimate and very obvious questions about the Deion comments, I think it needs to be talked about. That he did not do his son any favors. The NBA 82-game grind is done. Now the real fun begins. The NBA playoffs. Love them. They're here. Time for drama, clutch moments, Steph Curry, LeBron, jaw-dropping plays. I can't wait. If you're looking to make the playoffs even more exciting, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered. They're the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Playing games all the way to the finals. Now's the time to back your favorite players and teams as they chase glory. So all season long, DraftKings has been the go-to spot for NBA player props. That doesn't stop now. If you want to make your playoff experience even more intense, try placing a bet on your favorite player's performance. Will they drop 30, 40? Who knows? Or more. It's your call. If you're ready to place your first bet, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Takes 90 seconds. Lock in your bets, and let's make the playoffs unforgettable. Here's something special for first-timers. DraftKings customers that are new, bet $5. That's it, $5. And get 200 in bonus bets instantly. Just make it a playoff run to remember with DraftKings. Download their Sportsbook app. Takes 90 seconds. The code's Colin, C-O-L-I-N. That is code Colin. New customers get $200 in bonus bets. Betting just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Now, Deion did in March finally either acknowledge or infer that his son would be okay being drafted by anybody. But to me, a lot of the damage had been done in January and February and the Super Bowl week and early March. A lot of people were turned off. So I think that's part of it. I think there are messages being sent. It's not collusion. I mean, if Pete Carroll and Mike Tomlin both pass on him, Tomlin needs a starter, and Pete could use a backup. They are both player friendly. They have both been coaches willing to draft players where there's a little bit of noise around them, and they passed. The Shedeur stuff, obviously. The Deion stuff, obviously, turned off some people. And I've said this, that all this stuff's going to be tricky. You got college quarterbacks now come in, and they've made $5 or $6 million, and sometimes, you just got to be humble in those interviews. You may not respect that assistant coach. It may be a team that's not going to draft you, but a little humility. Too much humility is never a bad thing, especially when you're young and you're a potential employee and you're talking to a potential employer. Err on the side of humility is not a bad thing. As far as the Cleveland Browns drafting him, it doesn't bother me. I mean, their quarterback room's a mess. Their takeaway is, hey, Dillon Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, go compete. By the way, when running backs come to camp and they're drafted, there's 9 running backs there. I mean, you don't think in camp there's not 9 running backs? There's not 11 linebackers? There's not 14 offensive linemen? Compete. It's rare. You usually have like 3 quarterbacks, but if you have 5, who cares? Joe Flacco, Deshaun Watson, Kenny Pickett, Dillon Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders. Who cares? You don't have a star. If you don't have a star, go compete. I mean, that every other position is asked to compete. It's okay occasionally if an NFL team says, we're going to draft a couple quarterbacks. Neither are great prospects. We think they're okay. Peter Schrager brought up something I thought was kind of interesting. Former Fox employee, now with ESPN, and a friend. I thought Schrager brought up something that was kind of interesting. He said, Deion has worked for, so many people in the media that nobody wanted to come out during the process and be critical of not Deion, but be critical of Shedeur because, they know Deion. And said maybe that he was overhyped by all of us in the media. Now, I think it's interesting. I will say this. I thought he was a good prospect. I can remember when Deshaun Watson came out of Clemson. I didn't think he was that accurate of a quarterback. I thought he's a great athlete, but I said he's a B prospect. He had some A moments, but a lot of people, I thought Deshaun Watson was a bit overhyped, but he'd be good. I didn't get Mitch Trubisky at all. I didn't get Zach Wilson at all. I didn't get Daniel Jones at all. I thought Sam Darnold was really, really good. He proved it last year, but it took a while. I liked Shedeur Sanders. I think he's a pocket quarterback who moves well enough. I think he's really, really accurate. I think some of the stuff, holding the ball too long, you can coach a guy out of that. But he's not a great prospect. And it's just like in life. If you're not a great prospect interviewing for any job, you probably shouldn't set up parameters or, hey, we're going to do it. And it's Dad was leading the way on this. But you go do the homework on that. Nobody wanted to talk about that. It's not great. And football is very protective and very tribal about its culture. It does not want to be baseball and give 10-year contracts. Why would it? It's a more popular sport. It doesn't want to be basketball where players run the sport, load management. It doesn't want to be that. Okay, football's culture, the brotherhood of it, its family, all their marketing, its family, it matters to them a lot, and they have every right to be prideful and protective of it. They have every right to be prideful. Every sport has a different culture. Golf's got a different one than NASCAR. Gymnastics has a different one than college baseball. That's fine. Every company's got a different culture. But football is not going to let dads tell them what to do. And I don't know Deion Sanders. He's got a healthy self-confidence. And in this instance, I do not think he helped his son. And the other thing, just to throw out there, that this has been talked about for years. Years ago, Bill Parcells was famous for saying he doesn't want to draft celebrity quarterbacks, but I think that's impossible now. They're just at the NIL, the games are on TV. More games are on TV than ever. So college quarterbacks, if they play for big programs, are going to be a little bit